Let's talk about reinventing education spaces. And I would love to bring on our amazing panelists, Kamisha Jones, Kelvin Bentley, and Britt Yenzer. Welcome, you guys.
Hey, hey.
Hey, hello everyone.
Hey.
So let's start. I would love for you guys to just go around and briefly just talk a little bit about yourselves and your experience. You all have really cool jobs and kind of like a really cool relation to the AV industry or tech industry. So, Kamisha, do you want to start?
Absolutely. Hey, I'm Kamisha Jones. I'm AV Project Manager at Florida International University. I basically do anything a person sees and hears at events in our student centers. And I also work with the Miami Heat, doing the same thing.
Very cool. Kelvin, what about you?
Hi everyone. My name is Kelvin Bentley. I serve as a program manager within the Office of Academic Affairs for the University of Texas System. I support an initiative called Texas Credentials for the Future, in which we're trying to provide students, alumni, other types of learners free access to industry credentials, with the hope being that those industry credentials, along with a degree, will help our learners stand out more in the evolving world of work. I have leveraged a lot of educational related technology over the past 25 years, which has been my background in higher ed, and just excited to be a part of today's conversation about the role of technology in the future of higher ed.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Britt, last but certainly not least, why don't you go?
Hey, thanks for having me here. I always love launch week. I am Britt Yenser. I am the AV manager at Northampton Community College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. What that means is I am responsible for the AV in about 215 spaces across 3 physical campuses. I also serve on the board of directors for HETMA, the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance.
Very cool. So, as y'all can see, 3 amazing people to talk about what we're going to be talking about today. So, let's start by just kind of keeping it really high level. And I'm just going to throw this out, and whoever wants to go first can totally go first. And I love when you guys just piggyback off of each other's answers. And I just love this to be just like a super casual conversation. So, education has very clearly gone through some massive shifts, especially in the past few years. So I was interested in just kind of picking all 3 of your brains. What are you guys seeing right now that kind of it clues us in and tells us that we're in a brand new era of learning?
AI is always in the conversation. Chat
Yeah,
GPT, those type of language and lingo lets us know, okay, we're not in our startup dial-up era when internet first started type of situation. It's more advanced, it's more um out there, so it's more advanced than normal. So I think using those terms alone, AI and chat gpt, lets us know, okay, we're way above, we're way advanced now. So that's what I think.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, I think just along with the technology, I think there's still lots of open questions about, the role of AI. What types of programs will schools support, and then just also just figuring out, like, on the vendor side of things, who do you trust, right? So there's lots of just open questions about what is AI, how can it be leveraged. Lots of concerns too around plagiarism, as we know. Folks really worried about how learners will leverage AI tools to complete assignments and things like that. I think it'll be interesting just to see this over time, how schools respond, and hopefully don't necessarily ban AI related tools, but really think of creative ways for learners to use them. And still trying to provide some structure for learners so that they know what tools to use and in what capacity.
Yeah, and AI is really interesting because it's like, where do we want to go with this conversation? Because there are so many facets to it. We have to be, especially in higher education, we need to be good stewards of data. and know where information is going and how it's being used. And we need to educate people. So one thing that we're seeing across the board with students is that they are really excellent consumers of technology. They are not good, like, experts in technology, right? And like that's a really common misnomer, I think, is, people think like, oh, we give toddlers iPads so when they're grown-ups they understand how technology works. That's not true. I think if you stopped the average student on any campus and even asked them how does the internet work, they would be like, what are you talking about? Right? Like they only know how to use it. So I think we need to start getting better about educating people about what these things are, what they're doing to the environment, what good sustainable practices are. So I mean, we could go all day just about that.
Yeah. Ugh, and yeah, that's like a million cans of worms. So we really are like kind of, it feels like almost like on the frontier of like this really weird new era of like what the heck do we even do? And kind of one area of this is hybrid learning, right? It seems like just about every school has a different like idea about hybrid learning. Do they allow it? Do they not? What's the technology in place in certain classrooms? Is it the same in every classroom? How is each instructor utilizing it? So, when it comes to hybrid learning, what do you guys think is actually really working in practice and what is kind of still a challenge?
I think it's a challenge just to define what we mean by hybrid. So, higher education really likes to make up what words mean, right? So, you have hybrid and high flex and lots of different combinations of those words, and it means something different to different schools and different professionals. So, I would first start with the conversation of what is it you're looking to do? Like, actually define this for me. And then I really like to break things down for people. Once we're on the same playing field and we understand what we're talking about, like if by hybrid you mean we're merging a digital experience with a physical experience, I would argue we've been living that way for a long time. With the advent of the smartphone and having internet on your phone, right? So, like, if we consider the merging of the physical and the digital world, I can pick up my phone and go into a digital world and say, I want this food. And then the food is going to manifest physically at my door. Or I can go online and say, I can go on YouTube, the digital world, and say, I want to work out. And I can physically follow along, right? So I think the more we get faculty and students on board with those terms of like, this isn't a weird, scary lift that you have to do. This is just like how we live now and it's normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for us, we are getting into the whole interactive why you in the hybrid learning. So, and I think that right there, it's a struggle for our seasoned professors that are really trying to keep up with the technology realm, like because technology is advancing every semester. We're putting something new. A seasoned professor was like, well, what is this gadget does now? Like, I don't need all this. So it's really about really trying to, okay, well, as Britt said, what are you trying to do? And I think some professors will like the interactive realm into the whole thing with their students, but also too, it's okay, how do you work this interactive thing? How is that? Is it easy enough? Because once again, you're thinking about easiness, about convenience, and then you go into your manufacturer and say, hey, I want X, Y, and Z. And they're giving you not X, Y, and Z, but A, B, C, D, E, F. So it's just like, wait, no, no. So just making it simplify for our seasonal things that we're constantly getting run to. We're definitely are trying to keep up with the times, with the technology, and making sure that we are staying in policy and everything like that. But also too, we're trying to cater to our more seasonal as well as our ones that are just graduating with their masters, going straight into education, and they are very technology savvy, and it's like, okay, I want this. So that goes into a play. Okay, well, this building will have this advanced technology, so we're making sure that we're putting these classes are in this building. But for our seasoned folks or seasoned professors, we're going to put them in a more building that's a little bit basic, that gives you just that docucam laptop, computer based, a camera for their Zoom component. So like going back to what Britt says, is really what you want to use it for.
Great point. So let's talk about how technology and AV specifically are supporting flexible, like we talked about, like high flex and flexible and adaptive learning environments. How are you seeing AV support this? What does this look like? Because it's more than just kind of like plugging in a display and calling that flexible and adaptive, and like maybe you can move the display around the room, like, but what does that actually look like to each of you?
I think it goes back to the hybrid or high flex piece. When I think about flexibility, I think about the ability to join in on what's happening from wherever you are. So, and having an equitable experience. So, if I'm physically in the room, I'm having the same or comparable experience as someone who's at home or even in another country. Like, I think when we think hybrid or remote, we think like someone's literally at their house. Well, maybe not. Like, we should offer people the flexibility to access something from anywhere.
Yeah, definitely agree. It's not, like you said, it's not a plug and play. Troubleshooting looks differently now because it's like, okay, for an example, you are teaching a class and you want to play a YouTube video, and you want to make sure that YouTube video is being heard. Everybody's hearing the YouTube video, everybody's seeing the YouTube video. Now, sometimes when you're dealing with whatever platform you're dealing with, I'm going to speak on Zoom for an example, you have to tell it, hey, I want this audio going, I want this audio. So you have to tell it to what it do. Now, somebody on another country cannot hear the audio because you didn't tell it to do it. So that's another troubleshooting piece. So it's like, okay, or if you are plugging in your laptop or your device and it's like it's not displaying something, so you're like, okay, what could it be? Could it be just the cable itself? Could it be the dongle that you're using to display that? Could it be just a bad computer itself? So it's a multiple of things when you're dealing with troubleshooting and trying to be flexible with hybrid itself. So that's my take on that.
Kelvin, I'm interested in your perspective a little bit on how are you seeing like educators and administrators responding to all of this new technology that is like kind of available now to support classrooms and support learning? Are you seeing like excitement or like fatigue or like resistance? Because I think that, I mean, like I hear a lot in the AV industry, and I think that there is like this idea of like teachers being really tech resistant, and everyone but the tech manager in schools being really tech resistant. Is this something that you see at all in your role?
Yeah, I mean, my role is interesting because I work more at within our system office, and so what I tend to hear are kind of more anecdotal reports from the people that I work with locally on the campuses, and they tell me I think there's definitely a mix of that. I think ongoingly it's going to be very important to really for any type of technology related vendor, especially including AV related vendors, to really continue to understand the culture of the campuses. I mean, we have for example, 9 academic universities, and they're very different in certain ways, and so I think it still kind of comes down to really understanding, like, what resources can you provide faculty to really walk them through how to use the technology, and maybe really trying to work with institutions to kind of pull together faculty who could provide feedback about, what are the types of things they want to do in a room that's supported by AV technology, and what are the use cases that they're interested in, as well as on the vendor side. I think a really good vendor partner needs to also provide really cool use cases, right? And try to find that that opportunity to also say, like, these different things are possible, and we have some basically case studies that we can share with you, and kind of help you work through it. So I think at all of our campuses we just have to be mindful of where faculty are, but we don't necessarily have to just give up and say, yeah, we'll just give you just the basic um, the basic overview of how to use the tools. Like, I think really it's helping a faculty member understand what are the full opportunities that are available, and then just trying to find examples, opportunities to help them pilot certain things as well, in the classroom. Again, starting with some basics, but then doing some scaffolding too, right? Like helping them see that if you do this, this, and this, you can actually help your students, or you can be more efficient with your time in the classroom, that type of thing. So
No, that's really, really good points. Kamisha and Britt, what are you guys seeing? Because I know that you guys probably work really, really close with administrators, right? And teachers, and educators. So how are you guys seeing their response to new tech? Do you really have to hold their hands through it a lot? Are you seeing that, since technology and AI are advancing at such a rapid pace, are people just used to having to get used to something new every 6 months now? Like, what does it look like for each of you in your roles?
I think for my professors are very open. So they've been very open, and they are more accepting now to knowing that technology are advancing more. I think the frustration comes into play when things don't work. So when things don't work, they're immediately frustrated because it's like, okay, we spent this amount of money on this and it doesn't work. Why? So this is where the AV professionals come into play and making sure that things work prior to hand. And also too, sometimes we might have to do a quick refresher for a lot of our professors and things like that, especially if they haven't been in a certain space and we've upgraded it. So we'll do a quick crash course with them and let them know we're here for whatever you need, with just a button or a phone call and things like that. But like I said, our professors and our administrators are more open now to the fact that technology is advancing quickly.
I think that change fatigue is very real for anyone, regardless of whether or not how invested they are in technology. And I think we need to be ready and willing to meet people where they are, depending on their personality and what they teach. So if we're being really honest with ourselves, despite how much we're invested in technology, someone who is teaching some math, we'll say calculus, for example, like can probably really successfully teach calculus with a blackboard and chalk. Like they probably don't need a whole lot of bells and whistles if we're being really honest. So meeting the chalkboard and chalk person where they are and seeing like how is it that you teach and how can I pull you forward toward these learners who don't like what you're doing. They want to be able to join you virtually, or they want to be more engaged in a more interesting way. But like, let me take the basic principle of what you're doing and still make it easy and intuitive for you. If we make things too complicated for faculty, they're going to disengage, and then the students are going to disengage.
Yeah. So we talked about this yesterday in a panel that we did that was all about like AV and accessibility. Where do you guys see like technology playing a role in improving accessibility and educational equity? And where do you see if we're already making progress? And where do you see if there are any like things that necessarily we aren't doing the best and could maybe do better and help with technology in those areas?
I think we're doing a great job. Closed captioning has been the thing, especially in PowerPoint and things like that. And a lot of teachers have used that, especially when they do have a lot of disabled students in their classrooms. They use that. We're still, I think where the gray line is the hearing impaired as well too. We are still, it's not the best because, and also too, we're in the underline where does it come to our disability office that takes care of that, or does it go to our AV department to figure out how to supply that into that. So I think that's where that underlining is where what department does take care of that. And I know here we're wrestling through that because the disability people have their own resources that might fit into the rooms and stuff. But as an AV professional, we're like, okay, their quality is not the best, or we're saying, yes, this technology might be good for 2 to 3 years, but we want longevity if we're going to purchase this type of thing. So right now, I think that's where we're not doing the best at with the really communication as far as what's actually needed, what's the best outcome for that. But I think we're doing a great job with the closed captioning type of situation on those platforms and things like that. We're progressing, and AI does a great job with helping with that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The closed captioning, live transcription, lecture capture, all the sort of things that allow students to review things later, review things multiple times in multiple ways. There are different fonts you can use to help people who have dyslexia. If you seek it, it probably exists, right? And what's great about making classrooms and academic spaces more accessible as the rising tide raises all ships. So I would really encourage people to put certain accommodations into place as a general practice, this is what our general use classroom looks like for everyone, regardless of whether or not a specific student requires an accommodation. And there's one thing I'm kind of like get on a soapbox real quick, because the one thing that really I don't like when we have this conversation is a lot of people will try to argue that you can save money and have things be easier and more intuitive if people use their own devices in order to have an accessible experience. I beg you to leave your office and look around at the students walking around with their cracked, broken phones. That is not an equitable experience to have them rely on their own device, because most of the time that's not even working.
Yep, I agree.
That's a really interesting point. I don't think that I had thought of that because a lot of what we talked about yesterday was like, yes, this seems like a great idea because you can, let's say there's a piece of digital signage on campus and you want to get more information and there's a QR code. So you would scan that on your personal device and maybe you can read it a little better on your own device. But yeah, that is like making a big assumption, and that is that your mobile device is like good for that. Um so let's kind of talk about the future. Let's kind of put on our super forward thinking hats here. I would like you each to kind of talk a little bit about what trends you guys think are going to shape education the most over the next 2 to 3 years. And I'm assuming, like, yes, AI is going to be a big part of that, but how do you guys see AI being a big part of that?
I say interactive when we're doing, so for an example, a nursing school or something like that, and they have the cadaver on a digital platform and they're actually doing a type of surgery, things like that. I see that advancing when we're talking about the medical field, when we're talking about even law schools. For an example, you can have a mock trial digitally type of situation, have a digital judge, things like that. So I think interactively is where I see more interactive, where I see students are more engaged, because once again, we do live in a digital world now. So more interactive for them to have more better learning experience and a more student experience around campus.
Yeah, I completely agree. Interactivity is the way to go. And when we think about AI, it's not just how do we use AI, but how do we beat it? So, how do we create an educational experience that is so unique and so helpful that it is more than what AI can do, especially as AI grows? And what can humans do that AI can't? They can successfully interact with each other. They can pick up on social cues. There's like a very unique experience to humans when we are social and interactive. So that's definitely the way of the future in our academic spaces.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I think we're going to see more examples of schools leveraging AI for some basic tutoring. Providing in certain courses, maybe courses that have high DFW rates, where there's like some type of AI-based tutor that's helping students. Um, I do think probably in the short term, I think maybe something that's technology adjacent is just really these types of conversations. Really, like I almost feel like schools are really trying to think through strategically, like looking at all of their technology, right, and trying to find ways to see what are we using the most, what new types of technologies like AI do we need to invest in, because all these things, of course, cost money, right? And so I think that will always continue to be in place. My hope, of course, is that more faculty and we'll work with administrators to kind of figure out, okay, what are the tools that we can use, and maybe work to identify contracts where instead of like one faculty member kind of doing their own thing with this unique technology tool. My hope is that more faculty will kind of put their cards on the table so that institutions can find the right contracts, right, with the right vendors that can still achieve all the different things that faculty collectively want to do in their classroom. So that's what I feel like is going to happen a lot more, because I think schools are just overwhelmed with the options, and so to get away from that anxiety, I think schools are going to be more focused on a subset of technologies that they really want to invest in. And my hope is that more open conversations will make that happen.
If you each could redesign a learning space from scratch, what is one thing that you'd add and one thing that you would leave in the dust? I thought that would be like kind of a fun one.
Maybe I'll jump in real quick. I mean, we mentioned chalkboards, Britt. You mentioned that, and I almost feel like, just given my own learning journey, undergrad and graduate school, like I want to actually just do away totally with like blackboards and chalk and things like that. Like, it's the 21st century. I really feel like a lot of that needs to just be moved to some type of electronic, you know. Some type of board, like a whiteboard or something that's always digital, that can be saved, that can be accessed and archived. And then in terms of like AV related things, I think just being able to have almost like a way, like I'm thinking about this as, could there be a way in the future, maybe it's not going to be 2 or 5 years from now, but in the near future, could there be a way where there will always be a permanent archive of the content that an instructor provided to you in a course, right? The audio, the video, it's saved somewhere such that you have access to it as long as you are actively a student. Or maybe you even have access to some of that content as an alumni member after you graduate, because I feel like there could always be a way. I mean, some of that content could be helpful ongoingly, in our ongoing, lifelong learning. So I'll stop there, but I think that would be great to have a permanent archive of that.
It's a good one.
I would want to add pods so students can work strategically in groups, and those pods would include video conferencing components at each pod. So instead of having 40 or 60 or whatever students joining on a Zoom and they're all blasted on the front of the screen and it gets very messy and like not interactive, break them into groups. Again, that interactivity we're talking about. And I would do away completely with lecture halls. And that's not a new or novel concept. Those have been going away because that's not really how people teach anymore. It's not a best practice. But we do kind of have to update how we think as technology professionals, because when we study things like ergonomics, we're still learning that the best sight lines are when seating is scaffolded, right? But like, that's fine for a movie theater. I love watching a movie that way, but I don't want to learn that way.
That's fair.
I would take away like standardized desk, and I mean what I mean by that is really have an option where students, if they want to sit down, if they don't. I think also too, I've seen a lot of regular classrooms where students just sit there and they're listening to it. That's the obvious, but just having a space where it's optional to sit down, it's optional to do this and that, especially what type of class it is as well too. What I would add, it's nothing necessarily add. I'll keep an interactive board where we are doing, but also to add little smaller boards without throughout the room, and then it can be like a one large board here where we can always collaborate through those smaller boards, things like that. So yeah, I think that's what I would do.
No, those are all really great. Okay, so I think we have a little bit of time. So I did want to squeeze one audience question in here. So, Gary asks, what course capture systems are you using, and are your faculty on board with class capture?
So my faculty unfortunately aren't super on board with class capture at this time. While we do offer hybrid or high flex courses, it's still very much like you are here and it's happening live. So as I start to communicate with those faculty more, I'm trying to have those conversations of what does lecture capture look like and how could it benefit you. But that is a very large conversation involving a lot of people, because once you start recording things, you also consider where is it stored, and now we're talking about safe data and all that stuff. So it's a big undertaking to take that on if you're not already doing it. But I will say, as far as like products I'm aware of, the like if you take a look at what Epiphan has to offer, there are several HETMA approved products that are appropriate for lecture capture.
Perfect.
We do have it, and we use Canva. So Canva is like really what we use in the stuff that it is captured. It goes directly to that Canva course. So if it's a math class that's being captured, it goes directly to there. So that's what we use here at FIU.
Okay, got you. Kelvin, is there anything that's used like over the whole system, or is it kind of more like school by school based?
No, that's a great question. I'm not sure of the answer to that, but yeah, it would be interesting to kind of to find out. But I mean, I would argue that there's probably some, outside of the learning management systems, to some extent. I think some campuses do have their own approach to that, but I'm not 100% sure.
No worries, no worries. Well, I think that is about all of the time we have. The last question I'm going to ask all of you is to go around and say a little bit about where people can connect with you on the internet. So first, Britt, you want to go?
Sure. So I am on LinkedIn as Britt Yenser CTS. I'm also on X and Blue Sky as Brave_Britt_.
Perfect. Kamisha?
You can reach me at LinkedIn at Kamisha Jones.
Perfect. And Kelvin?
Yeah, she could just find me on LinkedIn. If you Google me there, if you Google me and LinkedIn, you can find me there. Also, you can find me on the University of Texas System webpage. I have a profile, email information there. So.
Perfect. And a reminder to our audience, if you would like to connect with any of our panelists, you can also do so by scrolling to their headshot and clicking on their name here on the Launch platform. Thank you guys so much for your time. This has been such a fun panel. I've had such a good time hosting it. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.